Welcome to the deep dive. We know the news cycle these days feels, well, relentless, right? It's just a constant stream.
It really is. You're bombarded with headlines, bits and pieces, but getting the full picture, that feels harder than ever. You end up feeling overwhelmed, maybe even less informed.
Exactly. And that's where we come in. Think of this deep dive as your way to cut through all that noise. We connect the dots between things that might seem unrelated.
Yeah, we look at the underlying forces really shaping things, how power is used, how influence shifts, and critically, the fight to keep our basic systems working with integrity.
Absolutely. So today, we're going to cover a lot of ground. We'll look at how political maps get drawn, which sounds technical, but it literally decides who votes and whose voice counts.
And we'll touch on the economy, the unseen forces guiding it, plus some high-stakes legal battles testing the very foundations of our justice system.
Right. And even how local communities are sometimes standing up against big national policies. We'll pull out some surprising details, maybe a bit of dark humor where appropriate, just to help you grasp what's really important in all this.
Our goal is simple. Aha moments for you. Real understanding, but without that feeling of drowning in information.
All right, ready to jump in? Let's unpack this. Okay, first up, the maps and the balance of power. Redistricting. It sounds so bureaucratic.
It does, doesn't it? But it's probably one of the most critical and honestly often underreported battlegrounds for sheer political power.
It's not just about procedure.
Oh, not at all. When one party gets control of drawing those electoral district lines, they're not just trying to win the next election.
Right, they're thinking long term.
Exactly. They're strategically, meticulously crafting the electoral map to lock down their control over congressional seats for years, maybe even decades.
Decades, wow. So it really is controlling the rules of the game itself.
Precisely. It's like, imagine a football coach getting to decide exactly where the end zone starts before the game even kicks off.
Or maybe making one goalpost wider than the other. You're tilting the whole field from the get-go.
That's a great analogy. You're setting it up in your favor before anyone even plays. And we've definitely seen this playbook used, very effectively in states like Texas.
Yeah, Texas comes up a lot in this context. The map drawing there seems laser focused on guaranteeing specific outcomes, right? Making sure certain seats stay with one party, almost regardless of how the actual votes shift over time.
It's a powerful strategy for long-term influence, definitely. Very controversial, but undeniably effective from their perspective.
Which, naturally, leads to the question, what happens when other states push back? When they see these aggressive tactics and decide, hold on a minute.
And that's where we see this fascinating counterpunch, if you will, a move that really speaks to that idea of systemic integrity we mentioned.
And that counterpunch is coming loud and clear from California. A really big win for democracy, arguably. The California Supreme Court just shut down a Republican attempt to block a ballot initiative.
Shut it down fast, too.
Super fast. And this initiative is huge. It basically lets the voters decide on a completely new congressional map for the state. Puts the power directly in their hands.
Yeah, the speed was remarkable. The court essentially said, sorry, there's no real case here. One commentator said it was like a ref throwing a flag before the play even finished.
Okay.
But it's more than just procedure, right? It's affirming that core democratic idea, letting everyday Californians shape their own representation. That's a stark contrast to the sort of top-down party insider map drawing we see elsewhere.
It really feels like California saying, not so fast. To the kind of gerrymandering tactics we've seen become so common, especially, again, in places like Texas. It's like democracy in action versus what critics call democracy under attack.
And Governor Newsom has been very vocal about this, hasn't he? Championing this bill, pushing to get those maps directly in front of the voters. It's a bold strategy for sure.
Definitely making waves nationally. But you can already hear the counter-arguments forming, right? The claims of hypocrisy.
Oh, absolutely predictable. Republicans will almost certainly frame this as hypocrisy. They'll point out that, Democrats in the past have sometimes supported independent commissions.
They'll probably bring up figures like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who pushed for California's independent commission years ago.
Exactly, or Kevin McCarthy. They'll dig up old quotes, try to paint it as California doing exactly what it used to criticize. It's standard political maneuvering.
Which, given some of the maps drawn elsewhere, is a bit rich. But there is a key difference here, isn't there? A distinction that gets lost in the spin.
A critical distinction, and it all comes down to the process, the legitimacy of how it's being done.
How so?
Well, California's approach is legal. It's constitutional. It's happening through the ballot box, driven by voters, following the path laid out through the state constitution. It's direct democracy working as intended.
Okay, so it's voter-driven and follows the state's own rules.
Precisely. Compare that to Texas, where critics describe the process as essentially bulldozing through the law, twisting districts in ways that, they argue, disenfranchise entire communities.
So Republicans might try to say it's apples and oranges.
They definitely will. But the core issue really boils down to legality and democratic fairness. Is the process open, transparent, following the rules? Or is it a backroom deal designed to manipulate outcomes? That's the fundamental question.
And I imagine they'll try to take this to federal court, try to get Washington involved.
It seems likely they'll try, but honestly, based on the legal analysis we've seen, there's just no obvious federal claim here.
Really? Why not?
Well, they'd need to come up with some pretty creative arguments, as analysts put it. Arguments that are, frankly, likely to fall flat. This isn't a clear violation of the Voting Rights Act or some other major federal constitutional issue.
So California is just following its own state constitution.
Right. Empowering its voters via a ballot initiative. Federal courts usually hesitate to jump into state constitutional matters like this. It's really a state-level fight being fought through established state mechanisms.
Okay, but here's the really clever part, the strategic twist.
Yeah.
If the GOP pushes too hard against California's legal, voter-approved map, they could actually end up hurting themselves elsewhere, couldn't they? Like undermining their own aggressively drawn map in Texas?
Exactly. It's like that saying, pulling a thread on your sweater. You tug too hard on the legitimacy of California's process, and you might just unravel the arguments defending your own maps back home.
That creates some serious internal pressure, I bet.
Oh, definitely. Think about Republican incumbents sitting in potentially vulnerable districts, not just in California, but maybe New York, Illinois, places like that.
They're looking at their own tough re-election fights.
And they might start quietly, or maybe not so quietly, telling Speaker Mike Johnson, hey, maybe let's back off this California fight, Don't give our opponents ammunition against us. Their own political survival could force the leadership into a really awkward spot.
It just shows how a fight in one state can ripple out nationally.
Absolutely. So for you listening, this whole battle over maps isn't some abstract political game. It's fundamentally about your representation. It dictates the balance of power in Congress.
Which impacts everything. Policy, funding, you name it. It affects every state. Florida, New York, Illinois, everywhere. It's about who gets to write the rules for the whole country.
And whether your voice actually gets heard in D.C., it's truly foundational.
Okay, let's shift now to another really critical area, the justice system. And specifically, we need to unpack the Jeffrey Epstein files saga, the delays, the redactions, the whole question of accountability, or maybe the lack of it.
It's a deeply troubling situation. The Department of Justice, the DOJ, is under a massive microscope right now over these files. Remember, they promised Congress full, unredacted files, with exceptions only for victims' names.
That was the promise. But that's not what seems to be happening.
No. The deadline passed, the files weren't delivered as promised, and now there are strong indications they'll be heavily redacted when they finally do appear. It's more than just concerning, it's setting off major alarm bells.
Concerning feels like an understatement. Critics are using much stronger words: obstruction, stall tactics.
And the suspicion shared across the political spectrum is that these redactions aren't really about protecting victims, which, of course, everyone agrees is vital.
Right, victim protection is paramount.
But the fear is that the real motive is to shield the powerful men and women whose names and potentially whose actions are detailed in those documents.
It's striking how much this cuts across party lines.
It really does. That's why it's grabbed such public attention. The polling is incredibly clear on this. Huge majorities of Americans, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, want the full truth out.
Even among Republicans, there's significant suspicion about Trump specifically, right?
Yeah, something like half of Republicans surveyed think Trump is hiding something related to Epstein. That tells you this isn't just another partisan squabble. This has hit a nerve. The public, they smell the cover-up. The demand for transparency is overwhelming.
And amidst all this, it's crucial that the victims' voices aren't lost. There's a plan for them to testify soon.
Yes, a very significant development. Democrats in Congress plan to have Epstein's victims testify in hearings right after Labor Day, September 3rd.
That feels incredibly important.
It's critical because their voices, their stories, are too often just drowned out by all the political noise and scandal reporting. Hearing directly from them is a powerful reminder of the immense human cost behind the headlines.
It makes it real. impossible to ignore.
It brings that moral weight, that urgency to the calls for accountability.
You know that old Washington saying, the cover-up is always worse than the crime?
Mm-hmm.
Applying it here feels chilling.
Yeah.
Given the horrific nature of Epstein's crimes, child trafficking, sexual abuse, the idea that covering that up could be seen as equally or even more damaging,
Yep.
it just speaks volumes.
It really does. And you look at the protection Epstein received over the years, that unbelievable sweetheart deal he got years ago that basically let him walk free.
That was Alex Acosta, wasn't it? The U.S. attorney at the time.
Correct. And Acosta, the man behind that deal, later became Trump's labor secretary. And notably, despite his central role in this whole sordid history, Republicans haven't called him to testify.
Which tells you a lot, critics would say.
It certainly raises questions about priorities, doesn't it? It points towards a potentially systemic level of protection, not just a single mistake.
Which brings us back to the files themselves. What could possibly be in there that's so explosive, so damaging, that the current DOJ under Trump is willing to absorb this much political heat, potentially tank their credibility, just to keep it hidden?
That's the terrifying question, isn't it? The fact that they're enduring this firestorm suggests the information must be perceived as even worse than the current political damage. It hints at something truly devastating.
And Trump's usual tactics, the rallies, the distractions, trying to change the subject, they don't seem to be working this time.
For once, no. The public suspicion is too strong, too persistent. It's hard to bury this one. And you also see that sort of deafening silence from many in the Freedom Caucus on this issue. Usually very vocal critics, but quiet on Epstein. It's telling. Now, while this storm around the Epstein files rages, power is being exercised in other, less sensational but equally impactful ways, specifically through economic policy. Congress is pushing forward with this big, beautiful bill.
Which sounds lovely, doesn't it? But when you dig into the analysis, it's being described as something quite different. One of the biggest wealth transfers in American history.
A wealth transfer? How so?
Well, critics characterize it as a massive shift of resources away from working-class families towards the ultra-rich. The specifics are pretty stark.
Like what?
We're talking about historic cuts to Medicaid, which millions rely on for healthcare, especially low-income families, seniors, people with disabilities, and historic cuts to SNAP benefits, food stamps, things that provide a basic safety net.
So healthcare and food assistance are on the chopping block. Massively. Which could mean nursing homes closing, people losing access to essential care, families struggling even more to afford groceries. On top of that, the student loan system seems structured to funnel young people into private predatory loans rather than more manageable federal options.
And there's a catch with the timing of these cuts.
A huge catch. Many of the deepest cuts are backloaded. They're designed not to take full effect until after the midterm elections.
So the pain isn't fully felt until after people have voted.
Exactly. It hides the true impact until it's politically convenient. But people are already feeling the squeeze elsewhere. This bill is apparently deeply unpopular.
You don't need polls to tell you that sometimes. I mean, who hasn't felt that sticker shock at the grocery store lately? Prices up, packages smaller.
Right. And it's hitting everywhere, not just big cities. Rural America is feeling intense economic pressure. One foreign newspaper even coined that term redneck recession, highlighting the severe strain in those areas. So, you connect these two threads. The Epstein scandal cover-up and this massive economic bill, and a disturbing theme emerges.
Powerful interests working against the public good.
That's how many see it. Whether it's manipulating the justice system or manipulating economic policy, the pattern seems to be about protecting privilege, consolidating power, and transferring wealth upwards. And when accountability fails and policies disproportionately harm average families, well, some argue the survival of democracy itself is on the line.
From wealth transfers and hidden files to the very mechanics of the justice system itself. Let's talk about its potential weaponization, starting with this almost unbelievable story about an attempt to install an illicit prosecutor.
It really is astonishing. The attempt by Donald Trump to put Alina Habba in charge as the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. Her main qualifications seem to be, well, being his personal lawyer.
And formerly general counsel for a parking garage company, right? Not exactly the typical resume for a top federal prosecutor.
Not even close. And this wasn't some bureaucratic mix-up. The analysis suggests it was a deliberate move, prioritizing personal loyalty above all else, placing allegiance way ahead of qualifications or proper procedure.
But the judges in New Jersey blocked her initially.
They did. They rejected her appointment. But then Pam Bondi, another Trump ally, apparently tried this convoluted loophole exploit.
What was the loophole?
They tried to appoint Haba as a special counsel first, and then sort of slide her into the acting U.S. attorney role through that side door. It looks like an attempt to bypass the judges who'd already said no.
Did it work?
No.
Uh-oh.
Thankfully, a federal judge saw right through it, ruled the whole maneuver illegal, and flat out declared Haba was just a private citizen pretending to hold the office.
Pretending to hold the office, wow. But the chaos this creates.
Immense chaos. And dangerous. Think about it. Any indictment she signed while illegitimately in that role, potentially invalid?
Meaning criminals could walk free.
Dangerous criminals could walk free. Exactly, because the process was fundamentally flawed. And what's really alarming is the suggestion this wasn't just a one-off in New Jersey. Reports indicate similar schemes were tried in other districts across the country.
A pattern, a deliberate effort to politicize these key positions.
That's the implication. And it completely undermines that whole law and order image. Real tough on crime, needs competent, legitimate prosecutors following the law, not loyalists who risk blowing up major cases.
It's genuinely destabilizing for public trust in the system.
Absolutely. And this idea of weaponizing the system extends beyond just appointments. There's serious concern about potential investigations targeting political opponents, specifically Adam Schiff and Letitia James.
The motivation seems pretty clear there, payback.
That's certainly how it looks. Schiff was a major antagonist during impeachment, a real thorn in Trump's side. And Letitia James, as New York AG, hit Trump hard financially with that fraud suit and also went after the NRA, a key ally.
So they're clear targets. What are the actual allegations being floated?
Against Schiff, it seems to involve things like how he listed his primary residence on mortgage forms years ago, or not disclosing certain mortgages from before 2011. For James, it's things like alleged miscounts of property units, a decades-old clerical error on a deed, maybe confusion over which home counted as her primary residence.
It sounds pretty minor, like paperwork issues.
Largely, yes. And the key legal point, especially for something like mortgage fraud, is intent. You have to prove someone intended to defraud, not just that they made a mistake or got confused by, let's face it, often ridiculous paperwork.
So proving criminal intent would be hard.
Extremely hard. Most legal experts agree. Prosecutors might try to argue a continuing scheme to get around statute of limitations issues, the time limits for bringing charges, but even that is seen as a legal stretch. These usually end up as civil issues, if anything.
But even if the cases themselves are weak, flimsy, as the analysis puts it, the investigation itself can be the real weapon.
Precisely. The investigation is the punishment. That's a classic tactic. Just being under federal investigation is incredibly exhausting and expensive.
Forces them to lawyer up, raise money for defense.
Diverts their time, energy, focus, damages their reputation, hangs a cloud over them. And some of the alleged conduct by investigators, like this Trump-aligned special prosecutor, Ed Martin, reportedly seen outside James's home sending bizarre letters.
That's definitely not exactly standard DOJ procedure.
Not even close. It looks more like harassment than investigation. And then there's that bizarre civil rights twist claim against James that suing Trump somehow violated his civil rights.
That seems inventive.
A pretty wild stretch, as the analysis notes. But you put all this together with the talk from figures like Kash Patel about reshaping the FBI, cutting training, scrapping college degree requirements, shifting focus away from complex cases.
You get less expertise investigating complex crimes.
And more political pressure to go after enemies. It's a recipe for chaos. It degrades the agency's abilities while simultaneously increasing political pressure.
So for the listener, the takeaway isn't necessarily that Schiff or James will be convicted of anything.
Probably not. The real message being sent is, if you cross Trump, expect to spend years and a fortune defending yourself, even if you did nothing illegal. That is weaponizing the Justice Department.
And that's a fundamental threat to the rule of law, undermining the whole idea of impartial justice.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, let's pivot to the economy. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, you described him as walking the highest tightrope in the country right now.
He really is. And it's crucial people understand his main tool is blunt, yet incredibly powerful interest rates. That federal funds rate, around 4.25 to 4.5% currently.
That number sounds abstract, but it hits home.
Directly. It influences everything. Your grocery bill, your mortgage rate, your credit card balance, your job prospects. It's the base cost of borrowing money. And Powell has to make these huge decisions largely by looking in the rearview mirror, using past data.
Which means he's always reacting, not predicting.
Exactly, a perilous position. And he's still dealing with the fallout from what many call his big mistake back in 2021.
Misjudging inflation as temporary.
Right, keeping rates too low for too long, which critics say unleashed inflation that crushed household budgets. We're still feeling the effects of that.
And the situation now looks even trickier.
It's incredibly complex. Inflation is heating back up, creeping toward 4%, which is worrying. But at the same time, the job market is weakening. Businesses are getting cautious, pulling back on hiring, cutting overtime.
So prices rising, but jobs potentially disappearing. Two arrows pointing the wrong way.
Precisely. It's a terrible dilemma. If he cuts rates to boost jobs, he risks inflation surging again, making everything even more expensive.
But if he holds rates steady and raises them to fight inflation,
he could crush jobs, tip the economy into recession, cause layoffs. Either way, the stakes are sky high. And again, his tools are blunt instruments.
Meaning he can't just target one problem without affecting everything else.
It's like using a sledgehammer when you need a scalpel. Rate changes hit housing, business investment, consumer spending, the whole economy. It's hard to cool one part without freezing another.
And on top of this economic tightrope, he's facing intense political pressure.
Relentless pressure. Trump and his allies are leaning hard on Powell, publicly demanding rate cuts. They're even threatening to go after Fed governors personally if they don't comply.
Like targeting specific individuals.
Yeah, like Lisa Cook, the first black woman on the Fed board. It's gotten very personal, very intense. And then you had Treasury Secretary Scott Bent openly calling for rate cuts.
Which breaks long-standing tradition, right? Treasury secretaries usually stay quiet about Fed policy.
Exactly. It was compared to a coach storming the referee's huddle mid-game. It directly undermines the independence of the Fed, which is crucial for stable economic policy.
And this isn't just a U.S. issue, is it? The whole world watches the Fed.
Oh, absolutely. Central bankers globally hang on his every word, especially at big meetings like Jackson Hole. Fed decisions ripple through international markets, currency rates, everything. Undermining Fed independence has global consequences.
So for you listening at home, this isn't just about Wall Street.
Not at all. It directly impacts whether small businesses expand or close, whether families can buy homes, whether inflation eats away your paycheck, or whether job cuts keep you up at night. It's your financial reality being shaped.
Okay, let's shift to the dynamics of influence itself. Loyalty, strategy, how power operates behind the scenes. And we have to start with those Trump cabinet meetings.
Oh, boy. The descriptions are something else. It's painted as this culture of just total submission to one man,
where officials basically compete to heap on praise.
Yeah, instead of offering candid advice or, heaven forbid, disagreement, some observers literally compared it to South Park levels of groveling.
It sounds awkward.
More than awkward, it's potentially dangerous, right? It signals a shift away from a functioning democracy with checks and balances towards, well, something more like an autocracy where everything revolves around one person's ego.
A king surrounded by courtiers.
That's the phrase used. Instead of a leader advised by independent experts, you get sycophants. And this obsession with loyalty bleeds into actual policy and statements.
Like bragging about using the military in U.S. cities as a test run.
Exactly. Or that truly bizarre claim of being entitled to 5 extra congressional seats in Texas seats that don't even exist. These aren't just gaffes. Critics say they're dangerous statements that reveal an authoritarian mindset, a disregard for constitutional limits, should send chills down your spine.
Speaking of influence within that circle, let's talk about Laura Loomer. She seemed to have real pull for a while.
She did. A very controversial figure, but undeniably had real influence inside Trump's orbit for a time. Now, though, it looks like her welcome mat is being rolled up.
Why the change?
Well, insiders are reportedly saying White House staff are just tired of her antics. But more significantly, there are growing suspicions her attacks aren't just ideological anymore.
Driven by money.
That's the suspicion. That influence from outside companies and lobbying firms might be motivating her targets. The key example given is her attack on Dr. D. Prasad at the FDA.
What was the timing on that?
She went after him just 2 days after the FDA told a drug company, Sarepta Therapeutics, to halt shipments of a gene therapy drug. And, surprise, surprise, Sarepta had just hired a big lobbying firm with known ties to Trump world.
That looks suspicious.
Highly suspicious. And the thinking is, Trump does not like when someone else is making money off of his brand or his orbit without him controlling it.
So if his bulldogs start biting inside the house, or worse, seem to be profiting off their attacks.
That's when the leash gets yanked. Suddenly their access dries up, and Loomer's track record getting banned everywhere, even Uber Eats, pulling stunts like chaining herself to Twitter.
It's the dog food incident. I vaguely remember that.
Yeah. It all points to someone whose volatility might outweigh their usefulness. And the fact her attack on Dr. Prasad failed, he was reinstated, suggests her usefulness is running out.
It's a stark contrast to the drain the swamp rhetoric, isn't it?
Absolutely. Critics point to this and say, business has never been better for lobbyists and insiders in Mad J world if you know how to play the game.
Now, flipping the script on influence, let's look at Governor Gavin Newsom using Trump's own tactics against him.
It's fascinating strategy. Newsom seems to have successfully rent some prime real estate right inside Donald Trump's head.
Mostly through online trolling, right?
Pretty much. You see Trump firing off a 12:02 a.m. Truth Social rant about Newsom destroying California.
And Newsom replies with just one word: triggered.
Exactly. And it's more than just getting a rise out of Trump. Newsom is using that attention economy very strategically. He grabs the spotlight Trump creates, but uses it to highlight his issues, real threats to democracy, like gerrymandering or voter suppression.
And it seems to be working in terms of getting attention.
The numbers are pretty stunning. His social media following exploded 450% jump on X, over 1 million new followers on Instagram and TikTok combined. Google searches for his name spiked over 1,300% in just a couple of months.
Wow. People were paying attention.
Definitely. And it taps into this seismic shift within the Democratic base. Remember back in 2017, like 74% of Democrats wanted cooperation with Republicans?
Yeah.
Now, polling shows 57% want leaders who will actively stop Republicans. There's an appetite for a more combative approach.
And the reaction from the right.
Predictable conservative media meltdown. Lots of accusations that Newsom is being childish, which highlights that classic double standard, right? Trump's antics are authentic, but Newsom doing something similar is childish.
It proves it's getting under their skin, maybe.
That's likely part of the goal. So what this means for you, the listener, is seeing a potential shift in political tactics. Newsom showing that fighting back hard, even using a few tricks from Trump's social media playbook, can generate real energy and results. The question is, will others follow?
Okay, for our final segment, let's zoom in on a local story with huge national implications. Mason, Tennessee, a small town suddenly at the center of the immigration debate.
It's a powerful example of how these big national policies land in real communities. Mason, a town already facing financial difficulties, possibly even a state takeover,
Finds itself voting on converting an old jail into a private immigration detention center.
Right, and the vote itself was contentious, passed with only 3 yes votes out of 7. The ACLU immediately challenged its legality, and almost overnight, 150 people showed up to protest with just a few days' notice. That's real grassroots power.
And this isn't happening in a vacuum, is it?
Not at all. It's part of this much broader, rapid expansion of immigration detention across the country. It's fueled by government contracts, private prison companies like Core Civic, which happens to be based in Tennessee, and GEO Group, and it's all accelerated by the political push for mass deportations.
So there's a business aspect to this. Core Civic is a billion-dollar company profiting from incarceration.
Precisely. And their model often involves targeting struggling rural towns like Mason, towns desperate for any economic boost, promising jobs and revenue.
A tempting offer for a town near financial collapse.
Very tempting. But the analysis suggests the reality is different. Most of the profit flows up to corporate shareholders. The real cost is carried by immigrant families torn apart and by communities forced into the role of jailer.
And we're seeing the enforcement side of this play out nearby too, right, in Nashville.
Yeah, recent reports describe the Tennessee Highway Patrol working directly with ICE, conducting these traffic stops in immigrant neighborhoods, often for very minor infractions.
Not serious crimes, just pretexts for stops.
That's the allegation. And these stops led to around 200 people detained from over 600 stops. Families left searching for relatives, people allegedly forced into signing deportation papers they didn't fully understand. It's heartbreaking.
I remember the Kilmar Garcia case drawing huge attention.
His story became a symbol of that alleged lack of due process ignored, and it mobilized huge crowds, putting a human face on the policy.
And the enforcement infrastructure itself is growing rapidly.
Astonishingly fast. Those 287G programs, the ones letting local cops act as ICE agents, they went from being in just only 2 counties in Tennessee to over 25 in about 6 months.
Wow. A massive expansion.
Huge. Plus, the governor authorized the National Guard for immigration enforcement. Initially, it was framed as just administrative support, but the fear is it's a slippery slope towards using them for arrests, detentions, deportations.
Taking resources away from things like disaster response.
Potentially, yes. Diverting critical resources and further militarizing immigration enforcement.
And the impact goes beyond just the immigrant community, doesn't it?
Absolutely. When local police are tied up with immigration enforcement, it pulls resources from addressing things like the opioid abuse, domestic violence, other crucial community safety needs, and crucially, it erodes trust.
People become afraid to call the police, even if they're victims or witnesses.
Exactly, which makes everyone less safe. So what can people do? The analysis strongly emphasizes local organizing. National policy feels huge, but these fights often start in city halls, county commissions.
Communities can push back.
They have the power to challenge these contracts, to demand different priorities. Mason is just one example. So, for you listening, understand this isn't just happening in Tennessee. This model is being rolled out across the country.
So staying informed and engaged at the local level is critical.
It really is, because the fundamental questions of power, who has it, and how we use it are being decided everywhere, from your town council to the Supreme Court. It requires vigilance.
What a journey today. We've gone from those lines on political maps
To the shadows of legal scandals and accountability.
through the tightrope walk of the national economy.
And landed in small towns like Mason, seeing communities grapple with huge national forces.
It's incredible how interconnected it all is. Power, influence, the fight for integrity, they really are woven through everything.
They operate often just beneath the surface, don't they, until you really stop and connect the dots.
Well, we hope this deep dive helped you connect some of those dots, offering a clearer view and cutting through some of that daily noise.
Because in a world where the rules seem constantly shifted by powerful interests, and the integrity of our institutions is always being tested, democracy really does depend on the vigilance and participation of us, the people.
So the question we leave you with is, in this complex landscape, what role will you choose to play in demanding that accountability and helping shape the future of these vital systems? Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive today. If you found this valuable, please do hit that like button, leave a comment with your own thoughts, and definitely subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration.
Until then, stay curious, stay informed.
And stay strong.